What if I told you some players had a magic button that could change the game in an instant? Today we're going to dive into a dark chapter in paintball history, from stealthy hidden firing modes to machine guns cutting people in half. These are the controversial guns that left a long-lasting mark on paintball. 1995 was a wild year. The paintball world was revolutionized with the debut of the first electronic gun, the Shocker. Meanwhile, the MPPL made it to ESPN.
Iron Men are power. All Americans are power. One a former world champion and one a current. Both pro teams are playing the game of paintball.
And the Juice was acquitted. May he rest in peace. He's no longer loose. Although he did kill that lady, so... In 95, the paintball world was revolutionized with the debut of the first electronic gun, the Shocker. Developed by New Ventures and later dubbed the Shoebox Shocker due to its shoebox size, the gun was a beast on the field. It had a very unique and complicated bolt that operated at just 200 psi, about a third of the pressure of its predecessors, which made it extremely quiet, smooth, and with its lightweight short trigger pull, it was a back player's dream. And just the next year, we would see the introduction of the Angel LED, continuing that trend to higher rates of fire.
Did somebody just get that phenomenon? 3 296s in a row? Did you get that? Ooh. Doo-doo brown.
That's the doo-doo brown.
Doo-doo brown, dude.
However, the advancement of these electronic guns was not without its hiccups. These high-tech guns could shoot around 10 to 15 balls a second, but the loaders of the era, like the VL2000, lagged behind, capable only feeding around 8 balls a second. This mismatch often resulted in chopped and broken paintballs, especially at those higher rates of fire, a frustration compounded by the absence of a technology yet to come: break beam eyes. The stage was set for a revolution that was promised to redefine paintball. But was paintball ready for the electronic era? Equipped with break beam eyes, sensors that would ensure the gun would only fire with a paintball fully seated in the breech, the Intimidator dramatically reduced chopping. However, a new challenge arose: the Hopper. Even with the advancements of eyes, there was still yet no loader that was capable of feeding fast enough. Until the Hopper issue was addressed in early 2002 with the introduction of the Halo, the first force-fed Hopper. It was groundbreaking. It was the first loader designed to match the firing capabilities of these high-speed guns like the Intimidator or Matrix. With the introduction of the Halo, the final piece of the puzzle was in place, creating a setup capable of handling the intimidating speeds of the Intimidator. By the early 2000s, we had everything we needed for paintball to take off. We had electronic guns, faster hoppers, and compressed air was becoming more accessible. Paintball was flying high. It was being played all over the world and in some of the best locations on the planet. Everyone who competed, though, even at the local level, were ripping their guns in the high teens, and some players were hitting 20. New electronic guns were hitting the market, revolutionizing how the game was played. The extremely small and light Shocker SFT had just been released alongside the Bob Long 2K2 and GZ Intimidator. Even more attainable was the electronic Spider Flash for only $200. It quickly became obvious that the leagues were losing control. Almost all the newer electronic guns, maybe most egregiously the Intimidator, had major issues with mechanical bounce. Others weren't as challenging, but everyone thought that you could shoot 18 balls a second, and you just totally couldn't. I mean, most of these guns were just bouncing. Soon, though, the MPPL would be bouncing players, as they started to work discreetly behind the scenes to develop a robot that could detect illegal guns. Meanwhile, companies like Tadao and Virtue capitalized on this, producing aftermarket electronics that could help reduce bounce, but also supporting any firing mode imaginable, from uncapped full auto to all kinds of custom ramping modes. The race to the fastest firing gun had officially begun, and the allure of the high rate of fire proved irresistible for too many players. By 2003, almost all the pros were using guns with custom software that unlocked secret firing modes. These could be programmed onto factory or aftermarket boards, often discreetly provided by sponsors, though sometimes overtly.
I one time watched 3 teams at PSP Pomona and X-Ball load their Tadao boards with cheater software. And I was the next team in line to get my software. And when Will asked me what I wanted in my gun, the only thing I could naturally say back was better than whatever you gave them.
Here are actually some photos of one of those cheater boards provided by Tampa Bay Damage player Dan Holliday. He used this board in his Shocker SFT when he played with Strange in the MPPL back in 2006. And you can really kind of clearly see the difference when we compare this to a stock board. That microcontroller's been upgraded to be a whopping 16 megabytes of memory versus the 8 on the original. And there's also a port that's been added to the side so you can easily connect it to a computer to reprogram it. Among the player's tricks were hidden breakout modes that were designed to work at the start of the game. Most secret modes were activated by pressing a sequence of buttons. For example, after the gun was powered on, if you quickly tapped the power button 3 more times, the gun could switch to that secret breakout mode. Now the gun will fire an additional shot every trigger pull above 5 per second. So if you pulled the trigger 5 times in a second, you'd shoot 5 balls in a second. But if you pulled the trigger 10 times per second, you'd get 15 balls a second out of the thing. But only for a minute. This allowed players to unleash insane amounts of pain at the start of the game, but would return to normal semi by the end. There were also rumors of board capable of ramping dwell. You increase the amount of time the valve is open, releasing more air, and in theory increasing the velocity. Although this really isn't the same as, increasing the pressures, and the effectiveness was definitely questionable, but it for sure indicated the lengths that players would go to. The extent of the cheating became an open secret in the Pro Division, with really little to no enforcement from the leagues.
Dave Maines can go out to the fucking corner and roll his fucking cheating machine gun, shooting fucking 22 balls a second, and get dinked out and go back and say, fuck you, I'm playing the next game. And he'll go out and he'll fucking, the next game he's gonna shoot fucking everyone on the other team.
As we moved into 2004, these cheater boards were appearing more and more in the lower division. Players started programming their own boards. If you knew an old pro, maybe you could borrow one. Or if you worked for a company that supplied boards to teams like myself, you could just borrow one. For myself, the cheating culminated at World Cup in 2004 when I was caught with a gun set to a full auto breakout mode. I got shot pretty quickly off the break, so my gun hadn't reset to semi-auto yet. And then a ref ran up behind me really quick, stole the gun out of my hand. My heart sank, I knew I was instantly caught. I think I ended up getting a gross major, a 10-minute penalty at the time, where you actually had to serve the whole 10 minutes, so we had to play 4-on-5 for 10 minutes. It was very bad. By 2004, it was widely known that all the pro teams were cheating, and that rampant cheating forced the leagues to do something. By 2004, the US paintball scene was dominated by 3 major leagues: the MPPL, the PSP, and the initial pro-only NXL. And each league began to experiment with unique solutions to try to tackle this rampant cheating. The MPPL led the charge by introducing a robot called the Robot that could operate a paintball gun's trigger to detect a legal bounce, or software that added extra shots. Although the robot was a groundbreaking idea and sounded cool, it was kind of hit or miss.
Remember the robot? The robot that was all this thing we had to take around everywhere?
I'm gonna say half of it was faked. I refused to, I think it was Dynasty. I don't know who it was, but someone the robot said they were shooting 38 balls per second or whatever, and I did not trust the technology enough to give it was like a lifetime ban or something. And I'm like, I can't give a lifetime ban for some technology that I have no idea if it's working.
Even though, like Tom said, the robot was not very accurate, the first year it was in use, it did catch a handful of players, most memorable being Entourage. At the time, Entourage was a Dynasty feeder team, and I think playing Division 3. One of their guys got caught with a bouncing gun, and the whole entire team got disqualified from the tournament. It might have been okay at finding guns with mechanical bounce, but it certainly struggled to detect guns with hidden firing modes. Unless someone somehow just put the gun on the robot when it was being tested, you're never going to be able to find one of those modes. So the robot was in essence a cool concept, but it certainly fell short and was quickly forgotten about. Meanwhile, the NXL decided to overhaul their approach completely by adopting a go big or go home attitude. They set the new standard at 15 balls a second full auto, and they believed this would just make a level playing field. Back in 2004, everyone who wasn't playing in the NXL envied the players who got to play with those full auto guns. It felt like the future, and it was unquestionably cool. 15 was picked because most players were already firing in the high teens to 20s. Although the NXL was pro-only league at the time, their bold move didn't significantly impact the scene until the following season when the PSP also adopted the 15 BPS ramping. Meanwhile, the MPPL stuck with uncapped semi-auto and relied on refs to try to police guns until 2011, when they went to 15 balls a second semi-auto. Only 4 years later, the MPPL would fold and fortunately have their last tournament. The PSP's 2005 rule change was pivotal, setting the new global standard for ramping that we still mostly follow today. Some players were seriously worried about the impact that introducing ramping would have, like this one PB Nation post titled, "New Ramping Rules Could Kill Paintball." And the author just feared that you might get shot in the head too many times and, well, die? Unfortunately, or fortunately I should say, that hasn't happened yet, and I doubt it ever will, so of course, if you have self-intrepidation, steer clear of the paintball field. Over time though, these firing rates have been gradually lowered, from 15 balls a second at the start to 13 balls a second, then we went to 12.5, and now we're all the way at 10.5. Lowering the rate of fire over time was done to try to speed up play. As these guns and players got better, it was just obvious that shooting 15 balls a second was much too fast, and lowering that rate of fire kind of allows players to move around the field a little easier. A notable experiment in 2015 was when the PSP tried to revert back to semi-auto, but only in the Pro Division. They introduced the true semi-firing mode that was capped at 13.3 balls a second. However, it required such precise trigger timing that everybody hated it. It was just terrible. To be able to get to that 13.3 cap, you actually had to pull the trigger exactly 13 times a second in perfect rhythm. It was really frustrating and confusing, and it was quickly dropped, but mainly because it was the PSP's last tournament. That's kind of how we have the NXL now. The PSP went away and the NXL came back and kind of took its place. As the main league started to implement their strategies to combat cheating, competitive paintball shifted toward a new equilibrium. The evolution of paintball has been shifted by cycles of innovation and the challenges of regulating play. From the early days of stealth in the woods with the Splatmasters to ramping intensity of modern tournaments, paintball has consistently reinvented itself. The introduction of electronic guns brought unprecedented rate of fire, but also unprecedented cheating, forcing the leagues to adopt new standard firing modes. Today, with that standard rate of fire at 10.5 balls a second, the NXL trying to balance fairness and fun, the question is no longer if paintball will change, but how the community will respond. Will players continue to embrace the current rules? Are we going to earn for the days of the Wild West in the MPPL and custom firing modes? Where do you stand? Should we stick with this 10.5 balls a second? Should we just go uncapped full auto? Should we use pump guns? Maybe we should just go stock class. Let me know your vision of the future.